Nigeria deemed deadliest place on earth to be a Christian in urgent U.S. congressional testimony. In a stark warning delivered via video link to a U.S. House subcommittee, Catholic Bishop Wilfred C. Anagbe of Nigeria's Makurdi Diocese declared that his country has become the deadliest place on earth to be a Christian, with more believers killed annually than in the rest of the world combined. The testimony, given Thursday before the House Foreign Affairs Committee's Subcommittee on Africa, painted a picture of escalating Islamist violence threatening to eradicate Christian communities in Nigeria's North and Middle Belt regions, prompting calls for U.S. sanctions and humanitarian intervention. Bishop Anagbe, whose diocese in Benue State has been a hotspot for attacks, addressed lawmakers amid a surge in assaults by Fulani militants, Boko Haram, and Islamic State West Africa Province, ISWAP, affiliates. Attacks have intensified, targeting Christian communities with impunity, he said, describing a pattern of church burnings, mass displacements, and targeted abductions of priests. He warned that without swift action, Christianity risks elimination in parts of northern and middle belt Nigeria within a very short time, citing the destruction of families through killings and sexual violence as a deliberate strategy to prevent future generations. The bishop's personal stake in the crisis was evident. In May 2025, jihadists attacked his home village, sacking a local Catholic parish and convent, killing several relatives, shooting a priest who was left to die, and displacing nuns. Although he survived the attack, he is unable to walk freely. This is the daily experience of many Christians in Nigeria, Anagbe recounted, noting the violence's southward spread, which has razed farmland and exacerbated food insecurity for millions of displaced people languishing in camps. Statistics underscoring the crisis were grim. According to data cited in the hearing and a recent congressional resolution, at least 7,000 Christians have been killed in Nigeria this year alone, averaging 35 deaths per day, with the country accounting for more Christian martyrdoms than the global total. Since 2009, estimates range from 50,000 to 100,000 Christian murders, alongside the destruction of 19,000 churches. A September report from the International Society for Civil Liberties and the Rule of Law documented jihadists razing at least 100 churches monthly. Other figures presented included nearly 17,000 Christian deaths since 2019. Recent incidents amplified the urgency. In June, assailants shouting Allahu Akbar slaughtered over 200 villagers in Yola, including 278 men, women, and children, in a single assault on St. Joseph's Church, where families were locked inside burning buildings. Just this week, gunmen attacked a church in central Nigeria, killing at least 2 and abducting the pastor and congregants. Separately, 25 Muslim schoolgirls were kidnapped in Kebbi State. In Plateau State, at least 51 Christians were killed in another raid. Subcommittee Chairman Represor Chris Smith, RNJ, who has led 12 hearings and 3 human rights trips to Nigeria, called the nation ground zero for global anti-Christian persecution. This is not random violence. It is deliberate persecution, Smith said, blaming Fulani militias for killings, rapes, and kidnappings conducted with total impunity from authorities. He noted that moderate Muslims who denounce extremists face similar fates. Represor John James, R. Mish, echoed the alarm, labeling Nigeria one of the gravest religious freedom crises in the world and urging the U.S. to leverage diplomatic and economic tools against enablers. Witnesses, including Hudson Institute fellow Nina Shea and State Department officials Jonathan Pratt and Jake McGee, described the attacks as appalling and religiously motivated, with perpetrators using slurs against Christians during assaults. McGee affirmed, "It is clear that Nigerians are being attacked and killed because of their faith." Bipartisan concern, nuanced debates, ranking member Represor Sarah Jacobs, D. Khalif, acknowledged the devastating insecurity, but cautioned against oversimplistic narratives that ignore overlapping factors like farmer-herder conflicts, banditry, climate change, and resource competition. "Violence affects everyone," she said, pointing to the Kebbi abductions as evidence, and criticized President Donald Trump's recent threat of U.S. military intervention as reckless and illegal. Jacobs called for bolstering Nigerian governance and conflict prevention, tools she said were curtailed under Trump. The hearing follows Trump's redesignation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, CPC, for religious freedom violations. A label first applied in 2020, but lifted by President Joe Biden in 2021. In a related move, Representative Riley Moore, RWV, introduced a resolution last week condemning the persecution and endorsing the CPC status, vowing U.S. use of diplomatic, economic, humanitarian, and security tools to protect victims. "For far too long, the world has turned a blind eye," Moore said. "This grave suffering must end now." Nigeria's response and broader context, Nigerian officials have pushed back against genocide claims, framing the violence as multifaceted rather than purely religious. Benue Governor Hyacinth Alia recently denied allegations of targeted Christian killings, attributing issues to banditry and resource disputes. On Wednesday, National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu led a delegation to meet U.S. Representative Moore, discussing terrorist threats and Christian persecution. In Nigeria's evenly split Muslim-Christian population of about 220 million, the North-South divide fuels tensions, with blasphemy laws in 12 northern states carrying death penalties, a point decried as unacceptable by U.S. officials. Advocacy groups like Open Doors rank Nigeria second globally for Christian persecution, behind only North Korea. Social media reactions to Anagbe's testimony were polarized. Supporters hailed his courage, with one user posting, "This is the kind of courage I want to see in men of God." Critics, including some northern voices, dismissed it as falsehood, while others decried government inaction. Genocide against Christians is ongoing, and the government is either silent or not doing enough. Videos of the bishop's remarks went viral on X, amassing thousands of views and shares. As the U.S. weighs sanctions and aid, Anagbe's plea resonates. Millions of displaced persons remain in camps, unable to return to their ancestral lands. This threatens cultural continuity, religious and economic survival. With violence unabated, the hearing marks a pivotal moment for international response to what lawmakers increasingly view as a looming existential threat to Nigeria's Christian heritage.